Graham Hunter, good morning.
Good morning. Then am I on the app? Is this my app debut?
It certainly is. It feels like a long time, Graham. How's life?
Life is utterly extraordinary. It's good to be me. I'm very funny and nobody amuses me more than I do. A little bit of golf recently. So I know you want to talk about more serious matters, but you asked me how I was and I thought I'd tell you.
How is Spain prepared for the return of La Liga? How do people feel about football coming back? Is it this great thing that they've been looking for quite some time? Or is there still a bit of unease about football coming back?
Well, you've asked a huge question and I can't speak for everybody. And there's a real massive variety of views. And I find it interesting that just like in England, for example, where we've seen Troy Deeney return to training and Kante return to full training at Chelsea. One example is Suso, who was a talented winger at Liverpool and AC Milan. He's now a really key player for Sevilla, one that Lopetegui loves. And of course, we begin in La Liga. There's a game tonight in the lower division, but we begin with La Liga on Thursday evening with Seville Derby. And Suso is a really important factor for Lopetegui. And he said a few weeks ago, my wife is due to give birth. I'm not really happy about the idea about taking a risk about going back. Normally, I'd feel differently, but if I took this virus and infection back to my house at a time when we were about to have another child, I'd never forgive myself. Yeah, he's not only been training full out, he's cleared from a slight knee problem. Looks like he'll start on Thursday night. There's a mini trajectory that's happened. How everybody feels about it is too hard a question, but if I take into account the media people I've spoken to, if I take into account the people who listen, the general public phoning in to radio stations, if I take into account what the majority of the people in the football industry have been saying, not only is there a natural embracing of not only a return to normality, but something that's a central part of the national culture here. Football is lived, as we've explained over many years, differently from in Ireland and the UK, but it's still something that marks out the pulse of this nation. It's a really important cultural phenomenon, not just a sporting phenomenon. And one of the things that I'd go to just to wrap up and answer to your question would be that La Liga has come out of this so far tremendously well. At a time when I know that there's still a huge debate in the UK about, where playoffs happen, where games happen, should there be neutral grounds or not, La Liga has set its course out many weeks ago and worked to achieve its goals. So, for example, instead of the clubs, because in Spain, different regions are in different stages of fighting back the virus and have different permissions. So at the moment, La Liga has taken over as a travel agency. So it will be shifting all the clubs around in terms of transport, in terms of accommodation. They'll try and make sure that as few teams as possible need to stay overnight in the venues that they're playing in. But you have to take into account that this will be, right now is not the latest that Spain has played professional football, because when I was beginning my football journalism career, Spain would regularly play into late June. The playoffs for the second division to come up go into June too. But they'll be playing into July. So temperature is a really important factor. They'll be playing in brutal heat in some parts of the country, although we're going through 15 weeks of the worst weather I've experienced in 20 years living here. However, it means a lot of matches will kick off late at night. It means a lot of teams will need to stay overnight, can't get home. Hotels aren't always open. La Liga has been pacting with specific hotels. They must open from a situation where they were furloughed or closed. They've been got back into working order, and each team that plays at a specific venue that needs to stay overnight, each team will stay at the same hotel, with the same staff, same precautions. I would argue that, in life, particularly in a situation that we've no real precedent for in the Western world, La Liga has put itself in a position where, yeah, sure, things could go wrong. Things like you just mentioned about, senior coach Michael O'Neill being diagnosed with the virus at a time when his side is playing a friendly at Carrington, and gets mentioned it. There will be, La Liga in Spain will probably stub its toe on various different problems in the weeks to come. In terms of preparation, in terms of seriousness, in terms of modern thinking, and in terms of trying to make the blanket of security for everybody who's going to be involved in giving us professional from tonight onwards, I think La Liga has done an admirable job. And I think it's been a baptism of fire for the modern La Liga, given that, we live in a country where the central organisation lagged far, far behind the Premier League for many years. This has been a test of fire, one which we'd all like to have avoided. But right now, I'm genuinely, honestly, and I would say differently if I felt differently, pretty impressed with the central governing body here.
Graham, when you look at English football and how that it feels has been very much front and centre in how Britain has been dealing with this crisis, from it felt as though they didn't take COVID-19 seriously till Mikel Arteta was diagnosed and suddenly football was cancelled and suddenly everybody realises this is a serious threat. Within a week, it had turned into Matt Hancock calling out footballers for not taking pay cuts. And a month later, we need football back to lift the mood of the nation. And now we're in the stage where it's back, and you talk about La Liga stubbing its toe, that if the Premier League stubs its toe at all, there'll be a pile-on footballers, their disconnect. And maybe that sums up a lot between the ruling class in England and their attitude still towards football. Have any of those similar conversations been happening in Spain during this? Have there been similar questions asked about how much players are earning, how they're reacting to this crisis in comparison to the average man on the street?
Geez, Ned, I thought Owen asked me a difficult question. As much criticism as there's been from within Spain about the governmental stance and the government stance vis-a-vis sport, Spain is not governed by the same class of half-wit that the UK is. Bumbling, self-interested half-wittery is something that Britain only takes a silver medal compared to America's gold, in my opinion. What's happened here is, again, it's a jigsaw of answers, because there's no way that this country believes that its handling of how the spread of the virus and the implementations of measures against it have been perfect, but they have been noticeably more serious, more strict, and quicker than in the UK. Now, where I would give you a constructive answer is that the sports department of the government recognised very early that getting football back would be useful, popular, commercially important to a number of clubs. And the female head of the sports department in the government very early got the FA and the league together, smashed their heads together, because two different men who run it do not like each other, do not get on, and take every opportunity to try and trip each other up. There has been, since this banging of heads meeting, a clarity, a unity, a dynamism of moving forward with noticeably no bickering, no bitching. And that has meant that football has been able to take the government as, what would you call it, a litmus test, a temperature test for the well-being of the preparation. So when I picked on Suso, but there were a number of footballers who said, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is too soon. I'm not sure if I feel safe. And what the football union here, the FA, was able to say was, all right, look, we're worried about infection. We're worried about general protection. We're worried about concertinaing so many fixtures in such a short space of time. We will not play more than once every 3 days. And football was able to relate all these problems back to saying, okay, we won't, the governing body of football won't order clubs and players to do X and Y until the government's Department of Health and Department of Sport give a nationwide okay that things are safe, and will project ahead. So over the last, let's call it 7 or 8 weeks, when there's been a really clear momentum towards starting to play at or around June 11, 12, we've had the stages charted out for us. And footballers have been able to see, okay, that's an aim, but now the government, scientists, or elected government ministers who are accountable to the public have been able to say, yeah, tick that box. So rather than I'll say what I think you were saying, the expedient use of football as a commodity by the British government, that has never, ever, there's not been a trace of that here. This has been run really centrally by, effectively by La Liga and its head Javier Tebas. But for once in Spain, and it'll last probably about 24 hours now that we're all going to be starting bickering about football again, there has been a unity of purpose, and it's really unusual in Spain.
Right, that's very interesting. Let's talk about the actual football, because Bundesliga and the title race was done within a fortnight. There is no title race to speak of in the Premier League. In the Liga, we've got one hell of a run in.
I think that's right in every sense. There isn't a single team at the bottom that is absolutely guaranteed to go down. I feel for poor old Lega, because they've got several players out of contract who'll be, rather than the case of the striker at Charlton, probably saying, well, you know, as soon as this league's out of the way, I'm getting a nice money move. And so I worry a little bit about Lega. But other than that, at the bottom, there are several clubs that can still drop in or save themselves. In terms of the race for Europe, it's absolutely fabulous, because you've got, at the moment, Real Sociedad top four, with Atleti saying we can't afford not to be in the top four because our debt position is such that we have to be in the Champions League next season. You've got Getafe, who play a style of pickpocket football whereby, like, they're as close to you on the pitch as somebody who's trying to nick your wallet or your phone would be. And that means intense running, intense pressing, intense work, which they're not going to be immediately able to do. They're bubbling at around Europa League and Champions League places. I think they've been prejudiced against by this gap caused by COVID. So Getafe, who looked like the fairy tale story to get in the top four, now might not. And then right at the top of the league, which is what you were alluding to, you've got a 2-point gap for Barcelona, who, in my opinion, this has been their worst season since Frank Rijkaard left, in terms of consistency, in terms of not fitness, because they're a diligent squad, but intensity, physical sporting intensity. They've been saved by grit, the real hard-nosed grit of Piqué and Stegen, and the genius of Messi, although Messi has not been playing at his best since about the Ballon d'Or awards. It was pretty sexy stuff. And you've got Real Madrid, who, if they could score enough goals to match their possession, if they could win at home more regularly, what a strange thing to say about Real Madrid, they would be top instead of 2 points behind. The thing that they've got up their sleeve, lads, is that the two Clásicos were a draw and then a win for Madrid at home. If Barcelona and Madrid finish equal on points, Madrid will automatically win the title. So the head-to-head rule. And at the moment, you would say that there are massive imponderables. Does it make it easier for teams to come to camp now with no fans there and say, yeah, we'll play you one-on-one? I don't think it necessarily does. Barca's fans don't intimidate teams. Barca will use the width of the pitch well. I think Barcelona feel okay about that. Real Madrid are putting the Bernabeu under major renovation work, so they're going to be playing at their training ground, at the Alfredo Di Stefano. There'll still be no fans, but it'll be a tiny little training ground stadium. Does that benefit them or not? There's in a cup. Okay, we start this weekend. We start on Thursday night with Sevilla at home to Betis. One of the saddest sights we'll see in Spain, I think, because of the stripping away of fans, is that crazy, passionate, frying pan hot derby. Without fans will be sad but necessary. But by the weekend, it's Real Madrid playing at home to Eibar, Barcelona at Mallorca. After which, there's a little conglomeration of games where Real Madrid need to play Real Sociedad and Valencia. Barcelona have to play Sevilla and Athletic. And that's the amen corner of games where this title will turn. You're right, it's tight. It's as personal as usual between Madrid and Football Club Barcelona. At this distance, it's really hard to call. The bookies will tell you Barca. I'm going to suggest to you Real Madrid. But come the end of the season, who the hell knows?
Why are you leaning on the side of the fence for Real Madrid at this point? Is this as much to do with Barcelona as it is to do with Real Madrid?
I think that Real Madrid have been the better side across the season. I think that they began to look a little bit jaded. They have a very talented physical trainer called Gregory Dupont, who I think got them in shape pretty quickly. But I think they had physical debt, which was affecting their clarity of final pass and finishing. Since I think during the gap, they will have benefited more than Football Club Barcelona. That is augmented by the fact that even though Marco Asensio has been out for a very long time, he's back. He will add both goals and goal assists. Still more importantly, the superb partnership partnership which was blossoming between Eden Hazard and Benzema can be resumed. Equally, Eden Hazard isn't going to hit the ground running looking like the Chelsea legend that he became, but he's back. He was out. Those two striker alternatives, or forward alternatives, that would give cutting edge to Real Madrid, I believe, helped very much indeed. Real Madrid were tripping up at Bernabeu. They were drawing and losing matches that they should have won. I think it will do them no harm whatsoever to be playing at the training ground, to taking the games away from an empty Bernabeu, to be playing in an area where they work every day. I think that's a minor advantage, but I think it's a plus. I think that the Amen corner sorts it out. Real Madrid's fixtures, in my mind, are a smidge easier, but they have to beat Valencia and Real Sociedad in order to make sure that the pressure's on Barcelona, after which I think they have the nicer run-in. And it's against the odds slightly because it's a 2-point gap, because Barcelona have Messi and Suarez reunited, which is absolutely vital. It looked like Suarez was going to miss the whole of the season that remained now because of this mad drop-off of games that we've had. He's back. So it's an instinct. I honestly think Real Madrid are also stronger, younger, athletically better side. I think when you play so many games in a short space of time with 5 substitutes allowed, I think Real Madrid's squad, their athletic propensity, and the fact that they're going to be, I think they're a better cutting edge up front now than they did. I think that edges it for them.
It is interesting when we touched on this earlier in the week in the Premier League, and players returning who we thought would miss the rest of the season. So whether it's a Suarez, or I know Eden Hazard was on the verge of returning, or Marcos Asensio, sort of the forgotten man at this stage of Real Madrid after missing the entire season. I've been reading a few things on Hazard, and a lot of journalists have had a lot of time to dive deep into what's going on over the last few months and what's gone wrong for Eden Hazard. And he's not picking up the ball in the same dangerous positions as he was at Chelsea. 10 times less per game he's picking it up in the final third on the left-hand side. This break, this getting a good spell on the training ground, does it give Zidane an opportunity to figure out how to get the ball to Hazard in those positions, or is there something deeper going on that we still can't expect him back to where he was at Chelsea for the remainder of this season?
Nathan, there's a mixed picture again. I'm sorry to be moderate and sitting on the fence a little bit here, and I'm sorry to have to kick out against some of my journalistic colleagues here in Spain. But there was quite a lot of tosh spoken. I've seen statistical analysis you're talking about, which suggested that Chelsea, he was given liberty to float around, not a number 10 role, but between the midfield and the strikers if he wanted to come in off the left. And at Real Madrid, he's been more pegged towards the left side. So if you want to build a picture that's a proper answer to you, he himself said that he had crisps and beer to an extent over the summer when he was arriving at Real Madrid, that he was carrying 5-6 kilos extra. That was pretty stupid. So he immediately gets injured and misses a chunk of time. He's not in peak condition in the initial weeks of his return from that injury. Then when he hits the ground running, okay, he wasn't at Chelsea level, but he was in a new team which was still rebuilding under Zidane, with others around him not necessarily on massive form. And he stood out. He genuinely stood out as being a player that made a difference to those around him, that stretched defences wide and long, that went past people. His form was very good. And I was at the game where he became, where he was injured badly, when Munoz stepped on his ankle and caused it. I think it was accidental, but there was no foul for it. It was crazy. He played on a little bit, came back in the league game, broke down again. The ankle needed rebuilding. Yes, he played positionally differently than at Chelsea, but in his first season, given the amount of injury absences he had, if you trained a close eye on the qualities he brought and the partnerships that he brought, it was coming. It was coming to a degree that was, I think, directly comparable. Why would we compare Hazard's last 2 seasons at Chelsea, when he was exceptional, maybe one of the top 5 players in the world, to his debut season, a little bit overweight and injury-ridden at Real Madrid? It's better to compare his start at Chelsea, I would say, and it was comparable. He was in good nick. He looked as if he was coming to terms with the different, not the size of the club, I don't mean to Chelsea, but there's a level of demand on you daily, a level of intensity that doesn't necessarily sit with Hazard. And you can compare it to Schneider recently, who, although he was talking through a balloon when he said, I could have been as good as Messi and Ronaldo, there's no chance, he said, I kind of liked a glass of wine here and there. I didn't really want to push to be in that top echelon. I was happy with what I did. Schneider and Hazard share a certain personality trait, which is like, I love to play football. I love to enjoy myself. I love a big salary. I love to win trophies. But to be up there living a Spartan life, to be number one in the world, it doesn't appeal to him. And that cost him a little bit in season number one. The idea that Hazard, when fit, wasn't being a big influence on that Real Madrid team wasn't, in my opinion, and he stayed fit, about to push them towards the title and push them to be better competitors against Manchester City. I think that idea is ill-founded.
One final point, Graham, and it's an off-the-pitch question when it comes to Barcelona. We had begun this year speaking about what is going on, what is the relationship between Messi and Abidal, and how is this going to develop. As you say, it hasn't been an amazing season for Messi and the team as a whole. What has happened over the last 3 months on that front?
Oh, man. Well, look, okay, I think we also touched on your show on that. While Barcelona reached out for state help financially, it was imperative that they negotiated a breakdown of salary reductions with the players. And the players not only said we'll take a 70% cut until the return of football, we'll also give an extra couple of percentage voluntarily from our salaries to make sure that the staff who might otherwise be furloughed with a salary reduction keep their full salary. I like that. That was a voluntary thing from Barcelona players. The temperature is a little bit different now because they should be, now that football is returning, they should be being paid the full whack. And I don't want this to be, you wouldn't tolerate a world's smallest violin and say, like, it's possible that when Messi and Suarez nick down the supermarket, they won't be able to buy as many bottles of Fanta and, Skips Crisps as normal. That ain't the case. But, honour, honesty, transparency, these things are important within football. They're important in the relationship between a club and their squad. And Bartomeu, the president, for whom I have very little regard as a football man, he's asked them to take a sustained wage cut because the club has suffered very serious losses. Their budgeting time is coming up because of the way the calendar sets the end of June as the budgeting time. And there is a strange situation when, everybody who advocates that having a presidential system at a club where the fans can vote for, and over the years, we've had that discussion about, foreign owners or a chairman we don't like, or fan ownership. Fan ownership lets a board. That's one of the rules are that if you make certain degree of losses, the board themselves need to pay for those losses, percentages of those losses. So at the moment, each of Bartomeu's board is standing. If the situation were to be, if the final accounting for this fiscal year were today, each of them would be out of pocket a six-figure sum themselves. Now they're trying to pass that problem onto the players' salaries. That's a hugely difficult proposition. The players are like, all right, world pandemic, and you need a 70% cut? Yeah, we're up for it. You haven't budgeted very well. You spent ridiculous money on signings that haven't worked. You've allowed us to negotiate brutal wage rises, and now you want to take our money away to pay for your ineptitude. That's not a good situation. It's not a happy feeling between them. So, and one more point would be they keep trying to flog Ivan Rakitic, who keeps saying, I've got a big contract. I'm happy. I'm not going. So is it a happy camp? In short, no, it bloody isn't. No, not even close.
It sounds like something that we could spend a lot more time on, Graham. We also wanted to get your thoughts on the 2010 World Cup, but I guess we're going to have to do it some other time. We are out of time, unfortunately. It's tomorrow, 10 years ago, the tournament would have started, so we've got a full month, basically, to go back and revisit it. I know you're doing
Come back to me. Yeah. Come back to me every single day of that month. I've got stories you wouldn't believe.
It's a great...
I was ready to just set you off for half an hour on the beauty of Xavi Alonso, but that'll have to wait as well. We'll do that over the next month as well.
Well, it's a great tease for our next slot.
You can count me in, baby.
Enjoy the football, Graham, and hopefully it all goes well. Chat to you soon.